If you like Elder Scrolls Oblivion, Skyrim, really any Elder Scrolls at all, you're going to love Tainted Grail: Fall of Avalon. This is a modern take on the classic RPG formula. The game itself doesn't aim to have AAA level graphics or polish. Instead, they want to provide a world worth exploring, combat worth engaging in, and gameplay elements worth learning. So what you have right now is an early access version of the game, and for those of you who might think that Tainted Grail sounds familiar, you'd be correct. They have a board game that's been available for a long period of time, and it is based in the same world. And that world is a dark, twisted version of King Arthur's tale. So King Arthur and Merlin led humanity out of the homeland using the help of these statues named Menhir. They're able to push back what's called the weirdness, which is basically this hardcore, chaotic force that when you step into it, it looks like a fog. You step into it, things happen. You can explode, you can mutate, you can become super strong. It's truly chaos. But after leading humanity out of the homelands and through the weirdness, King Arthur has been dead for a long period of time. And with that, the humans living in Avalon are desperately trying to find new ways of life and things to believe in. The plague of the Red Death and the spreading weirdness are also not helping. What King Arthur thought he had permanently dispelled is now coming back. Time is running out and multiple factions have their own plan for the future of the island of Avalon. Now, in this realm, slowly but surely slinking into chaos, you are going to find yourself imprisoned in a damp underground cell. At this point, you are an absolute nobody. But as fate would have it, you're going to be just the one who brings a spark of change to this land of everlasting autumn. So let's talk about what this game brings to the table and my experiences so far. So one, there is a true open world experience. You're going to be able to find lots of quests, lots of hidden things, adventures around every corner. And the thing with this game is it doesn't look visually appealing. And we talked about that at the beginning. It's not supposed to be a AAA visual experience. However, there is so much in this game that kept me playing. You know, what is around that corner? What's over here? What is that? And it was just a constant kind of drip feed of interesting things that kept piquing my curiosity, and it kept me playing. And the cool thing is, these are usually worthwhile. It's either a boss that you kind of stumble upon, and all of a sudden you're in this huge boss fight, and you're trying to fight and survive. Or you find this mysterious underground cell that needs a certain key to access, and then upon accessing it, you find tons of loot and named items, which you can then equip to make your character even stronger or build towards a specific play style. So what I'm trying to say is the open world aspect isn't open and empty. It's open and full of stuff to find. And this is one of the things that reminded me a lot of the Elder Scrolls series. So let's talk about some of the other aspects of the game. So one, we have the customization. I just talked about that a little bit. When you first start, you're going to answer a few questions to a guard. Now, these questions are going to determine what you start with. So because I answered that I was a druid and I would rather burn trees than hug trees, they started me off with a fire spell, and I was a caster, basically. Now, I don't have to stick with that. I can obviously move to anything else, but it's just a cool way of determining your starting class. Then from there, you can equip your character with a variety of armor pieces, weapons, spells. You can equip your potions, your quick slots, and it truly is like any other RPG. And this is something that I really enjoyed because they kind of got the loot aspect right. You start out with this like piece of junk gear, and then as you go through and explore the world and complete quests, you're slowly accruing named items, special items, items that have legendary effects, affixes, things that are going to make your playstyle, your build even better. If you want to be a sword and board warrior, you can do that. If you want to be a caster, you can do that too. If you want to be a summoner and have wolves and skeletons fight by your side, you can do that as well. So beyond actually customizing your character with gear and items and things like that, you can also spend your points on skill trees and attributes. So whenever you level up, you're going to be given a point for each. When it comes to your attributes, these are pretty straightforward. They're things like strength, dexterity, spirituality. And as you go through and spend points, you're going to increase a bundle of stats. So for instance, if you increase your spirituality, you're going to increase your spell damage and your mana and your magic armor. And then if you increase your strength, you'll get different stats. Now outside of that, we have skill points. Now skill points can be spent in those same attributes. However, you pick certain passives that you want to have. So again, if we use spirituality as a good example, you can increase things like your magic armor, your spell damage, whether you get a refund on mana cost. If you go over to strength, you can do certain things like increasing your attack speed, increasing your melee damage, and eventually gaining new skills and new passives that will help flesh out your build. So outside of progression and customization, let's talk about some of the other systems that are available in the game. Just like any other RPG, you have a lot of different things you can do in terms of trading, crafting, and cooking. So you can go and you can actually find recipes through recipe books, through talking with NPCs, and uncovering different dialogue options. You'll learn these recipes, and they'll teach you things like being able to make specific weapons, specific armor, learning new cooking recipes. And all of these things can be utilized to increase your chances of survival on the island of Avalon. The 3 trade skills I've discovered so far are cooking, alchemy, and blacksmithing, which allows you to make armor and weaponry. And again, as you go through and talk to people and discover different recipes, it gives you something to shoot for. For instance, I just spoke to this random NPC wandering around this village, and he was complaining about how the armor that he had to wear as a guard sucked, and it wasn't as good as he thought that we could make it. And so he gave me some recipe books for lamellar armor, which was a huge upgrade over the rags that I was wearing at that point in time. So it gave me something to work towards, gave me something to look for out in the world. I needed iron ore, among animal hide and a few other things. So once I was able to get all of that established, it was a giant upgrade and actually allowed me to really kind of get a little bit more into my berserker style build that I had planned out. So now that we know a lot about the game, let's talk about my experience so far. So because this is an early access title, the rest of the world is not available yet. And right now, the world is sort of restricted to the Horns of the South. So you'll have the tutorial, then you'll have the southern tip of the island available for exploration. There is a ton of quests. There is a lot of stuff to do in this game. And like I mentioned earlier, it was very difficult to put down. I'm somebody who loves RPGs. I love sort of that element and the gameplay loop that got built into the early RPGs, like I mentioned, Oblivion, Skyrim, Morrowind, all of those. And this really fits into that same vein. Now, for me, I really enjoyed the combat. I enjoyed the exploration. I enjoyed stumbling upon things. And that was my biggest thing is you look and you see something. There was this big troll on this hill. And I was like, I wonder if I can get up and fight that guy. So I spent a lot of time trying to go around and figure out how I could get up to him. Finally found the way up, ended up having like a boss battle with him, took him out. He ended up dropping a blue piece of gear, and it was great. Like, I had an awesome time with it. So it's just stuff like that. You know, you're running around. Next thing you know, you find this named assassin, and you're duking it out with him. You kill him, he ends up dropping his named assassin blade. And if I was an assassin character, it would be great, but I'm not. But either way, all of those type of things help craft this really kind of good RPG experience. So let's talk about the pros and the cons. So I just mentioned the world. You guys know how I feel about that. That's a big pro for me. In terms of character progression, I feel like this is an okay space for an early access title. I would like to see a little bit more depth down the road, because right now skill points and attribute points are great, but if there's different things that we can spend these points on, or maybe more engaging passives that we can unlock, I feel like that'll be a good experience. But right now, like I said, it's okay for early access, but we do need to see some more depth when we get to the final piece. The last big positive is the story and the NPC interactions. This is something that I typically don't really enjoy. I'm not somebody who likes to work through thousands of lines of dialogue. But the story of King Arthur and Merlin and how they led humanity out of the homelands into Avalon is incredibly interesting. And you can see this sort of weird interaction that people have with the legend of King Arthur. Some people really like him. Some people think that he was a tyrant. And it creates this situation where you don't know who to believe and whether or not King Arthur is somebody worth saving or leaving dead. So that's one other thing. Also, the little secrets you can pick up with dialogue options, things like extra quests, where people have buried treasure, how to unlock certain recipes, where to find certain legendary weapons. All of those things are packed into the dialogue options, so they're definitely worth exploring. So let's talk about the negatives. Now, the big obvious one, people in 2023, it's going to be the visuals and the combat system. Now, they mentioned that this was not supposed to be a AAA level visual and like polished type of game. It's supposed to be an ode to the classic RPGs. However, in today's day and age, it will be brought up and it will be something that people talk about. Now, for me, I don't really care too much about visuals, but I know this is going to be a negative for people. So if you're somebody who really likes the high amounts of polish, the high visual, kind of aspects of RPGs and games these days, then this might not be one for you. Maybe there'll be mod support in the future where people can drop like shader packs and things like that in the game, but for now, I don't believe that exists. The other big con for me is something to help track some of the quests that you've learned. So for instance, there was an old man by the sea, and I talked to him and he mentioned that I needed to go find somebody in a cave and I needed to feed them some food. It was a monster or something. However, after ending the conversation with him, I never received an actual quest that had the information that I learned. And on top of that, there were no longer any options to talk to that individual to get that information again. So I had to go off of my memory, and I understand in old school RPGs, you wrote everything down. But this is one thing I really wish they would add, because having a leads or a topics type of section in the UI where it says, hey, we talked to this person and he mentioned a creature named Dressed that was in this cave to the south. That would be great to have that either packed into the quest menu. If they're not going to give us a quest, it's an additional tab, or just go ahead and spawn a quest based off of that. Because I understand back in the day, you wrote everything down, any sort of key information that you thought would be important, and that's great, but it's 2023, give us a little bit of help here, and that's one of the other things that I think needs to be added. But besides that, the foundation is there. The game is incredibly fun. Like I mentioned, it was very, very hard to put down and move on to other things. And this is one that if you don't want to purchase it right now, because I understand the price is a little high for an early access game at $30, but this is one that I would highly recommend wishlisting if you like RPGs, and then just keep an eye on it. When it hits 1.0 or it's getting close to the final release, then go out, take a look at it, and make that decision as to whether or not it's something that you want to invest your time into. Okay, guys, so that's what we have so far about Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon. Like I said, I've had a blast with the game so far. I hope to see more of this game get expanded upon in the coming months. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been Vulkan, and I'll talk to you guys next time.